break is over, friends. Another week of league action already behind us and international matchups in Champions League and Europa League ahead of us. Welcome back to GFC. Let's hear from Alex, who is with me again today, on some of the results and the updates on the league from this past weekend. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Rick. Hi, everyone. Good to be back after the Nations League break. And as you said, a lot of action in the first and second Bundesliga. Obviously, the big top game on Saturday evening between Bayern and VfB Stuttgart. I think we all kind of expected a little tighter game here, but Bayern fired Stuttgart out of their stadium with 4-0 goals. Harry Kane with a hat trick. Getting back at his critics who kind of already spoke about a little crisis since he hasn't scored in a couple of games. But this time around he demonstrated once again that he's a top striker here in the Bundesliga. And what do you think with this defeat for Stuttgart? They're now ranking 10th on the table with 9 points out of 7 games. Certainly not what they expected. Do you think the Champions League, Bundesliga, and Pokal matches altogether are a little much for them?
It could be. Certainly, they had a lot of key players leaving the team, in the summer, so they need some time to reset and fine tune the new squad. So that being said, I'm not surprised that it's taking them for a little while. Again, if you look at the results, they actually only lost 2 games so far, which were against Bayern Munich and then, that one surprise loss maybe in Freiburg. But you also see where Freiburg is currently ranking. Quite frankly, my biggest surprise team that they're so far up there, just 3 points behind Bayern now. Other teams are currently in better shape, including like Union Berlin, right? That you didn't really expect up there again, who are playing the same type of soccer than 2 years ago that brought them into the Champions League. So it will be a fight this season for Stuttgart. I think at this point, and that's what makes it always challenging if you have just such an incredible year where you overperform. Stuttgart, in order to keep the squad somewhat together and to keep the club on this level, you need to qualify for Europe again. So I still have them on my sheet for the Europa League, but as of today, if you nail me down, I would say they're probably not going to make a Champions League spot.
Yeah, you're right. And Freiburg and Union certainly the winners of the match day. Freiburg, brought home a 3-1 win against Augsburg. Union 2-0 in Kiel. Kiel, as we all know, just got promoted. They're a newbie in the league, but they're not doing well. Only 2 points out of 7 games so far. They're all the way down there with Bochum. St. Pauli, another newbie, they lost the opening match of the match day in Dortmund with 2-1 goals. Again, Dortmund struggled a little bit, but eventually managed to bag the 3 points, which in a game like this at home in the Westfalen Stadium, it's just 3 points that you must win no matter what. Whether it's an ugly or a great performance, it doesn't matter. Work done, but judging by
it was certainly more of an ugly type of win again, Alex, right? If you look at the game, I mean, St. Pauli was very close there. They got 1 goal denied, which kind of brought a offside discussion up again, and whether those lines are correctly calibrated. It was very tight. And that would have been the 1-0, I think, at that point for St. Pauli. That goal got denied, and then Dortmund scored the 1-0 instead. St. Pauli actually equalized, and then Dortmund had another late scorer to make it 2-1. But it was not a top game from Dortmund for sure. And I'm still wondering where their season is going to go. It's a surprise box week after week. Certainly, they'll have another try in the Champions League here midweek, and it's one of these big matchups, a rematch up against Real Madrid, actually. So the repeat of the Champions League final last year. They usually perform better in these games, but then let's watch out for the weekend. I'm curious to see if they show the same face than against the Union 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly. You never know what Dortmund's gonna bring on the pitch. It's a surprise week after week. But yeah, they're currently 7th. They're sort of still kind of scratching on the top third of the table, just right behind Frankfurt. Frankfurt lost actually in Leverkusen, also with 2-1 goals. Putting
also debatable from my perspective.
Very much, Alex, very much so.
At the end of the day, not at the end of the day, at the end of the game, Jonathan Tah pushed, who was it? Ekitike, right? That
Ekitike.
Yeah, exactly.
Ekitike.
Exactly. On the way to a goal, basically just needed to head the ball into the empty net, and then Jonathan Tah is behind him and just gives him a light push, and that makes the ball basically fly over the goal. Not 100% clear penalty, but in that speed those players are going, a little push already decides over a goal or no goal. So that is actually, by definition, then a red card and a penalty.
Exactly, and the goalie was already out of the box, because immediately before that situation, it was kind of a slapstick moment between Jonathan Tah and his goalie Radetzky. There was a miscommunication, so Tah was actually the last defender, and as you said, the striker was up in the air, a light push, and he basically falls to the ground. Maybe it was almost Ekitike's own little mistake. At least that's what one of the experts suggested, to still try and reach the ball and not just try to draw the foul. But I mean, that's just silly. And what upset me the most is the fact that the VAR didn't even intervene.
Exactly.
There was no signal from the VAR to the referee on the pitch to go out and take a look at the scene on TV. And that these are precisely the situations where you need the VAR, irrespective whether or not the referee decides on a penalty or not in the end. You just need to give him that signal. Hey, there was something. I believe you should take a look at it. So why do we need the VAR if not in those type of situations?
Yeah, 100%, Alex. Absolutely. I heard you mentioning Bochum as well. I think that's worth to mention here as well, that the coach got fired in Bochum. Seidler had his last game against who did they play? Against Hoffenheim, in Hoffenheim, right? And terrible performance there, lost the game. And they stand after 7 match days now with 1 point at the bottom of the table. So there was really no alternative, was it?
Yeah, certainly very unfortunate for Zeidler. He was new in Bochum. I believe he was new to the Bundesliga overall. He was only given 7 games to show whether or not he had a philosophy that he could implement in the team. But yeah, look, we all know a team like Bochum by default struggles for relegation or fights for relegation. So if there's no impulse at all coming from the team on the pitch, then you need to take that measure ASAP. What else can they do, really? Otherwise, they're just gonna keep losing game after game. There was little to no sign that they were able to turn it around. And we know the business. Everyone knows the business. The coach is the first poor creature that has to leave.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the unwritten rules of the game. So yeah, I'm not surprised, but very keen to see who's coming in to replace him.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, do you have any thoughts on who might be suited for that spot? Who's on the market currently? I'm trying to think hard
Wow.
here
Yeah.
who might be
Well,
a
I
match
know
for
a
them.
couple of big names, but probably no one from the top of my head who would fit to Bochum. We certainly need, or they certainly need, a hard worker, someone who knows the fight for relegation, someone who knows the Bundesliga.
Right.
Let's see.
I mean, I'm thinking about guys like Friedhelm Funkel, right? But that might be too early for him. His last jobs were more in the second half of the season. Taking the last 10 games, trying to save Cologne and then Kaiserslautern last season from relegating. That might be too much for him in his age. He only wants to do shorter interim coaching engagements at this point. Similar to that is probably a guy like Peter Neururer, who fits very well into this
Oh yeah.
into this region, right? Proper
he's
legend as
a
well as a
Bochum
coach.
legend, exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's going to be someone else, probably one of these guys that none of us have on the agenda, like this Kees von Wanderen in Schalke 2 weeks ago. Like I have a feeling it's going to be one of these types of coaches that you'll see and not necessarily like a prominent figure.
Speaking of coaches, what's your take on Ralf Hasenhüttl in Wolfsburg? They conceded a 2-4 defeat at home against Werder Bremen. Again, Wolfsburg always with a lot of ambitions. Now they're again 13th, which is sort of like their standard position on the table for years. What's going on there?
Yeah, I think Wolfsburg is just a hard club to be successful at. I think given the small city and it being more a corporate club of the VW factory over there in Wolfsburg, there's not this typical pressure in the surrounding environments by the fans, etc. I mean, Hasenhüttl was complaining early in the season that the stadium felt like a ghost town, that nobody is cheering them on, that there's no atmosphere there. And I think this speaks. I mean, that does something with the players, right? You had Kovac there last season, up until last season, which I always thought was a good coach as well. He worked successfully in Frankfurt, unlucky in Bayern, yeah, okay, but then successfully in Monaco again. Hasenhüttl, similar vita, right? He has very good time in Leipzig, then goes on the island. Where was he? At Crystal Palace or I don't know.
I thought he was in
again,
Southampton.
South, yeah, that's right, Southampton. So had a somewhat of a good time there. Goes back into the Bundesliga, takes over from Kovac. Last season was whatever, just make it through. And then this season he got quite some capital again to rebuild the team. Had money. The squad on paper is a squad that definitely can compete for Europe, but they're far away from that. So yeah, it's going to get cozy around him. I don't think he can lose many more games, especially not in that fashion and at home. So we'll see. I think Wolfsburg is hesitant to make a coaching change again, but the industry is what it is. You lose a couple of more games and you're gone.
True that. All right, shall we move on to Bundesliga 2? A couple of interesting games there as well.
Yeah, and why don't we stick with the coaching issues, actually, because we just got breaking news here. Fürth actually fired their coach, Alexander Zorniger, and their sports director, Azusi, after their 0-4 loss in the City Derby against Nuremberg on the weekend. Terrible performance. Klose and his Nuremberg squad took away that win in this precious derby. But yeah, we've talked about Fürth in a couple of the past episodes as well. Zorniger is an interesting guy. I mean, he we had that story where he publicly demolitioned his goalie, basically, for the lack of a better word. And so I wasn't surprised to hear that there seemed to be a mismatch between team and coach in this case. And Azuzio brought him over, I guess, had to take his head as well and leave at the same time.
Yeah, it just felt like, as you said, not a great match, and I believe it was just a matter of time after those episodes earlier in the season. And as far as I know, from the local fan scene, Asuzi and the fans or the members of the club were somewhat not on very good terms either. So yeah, I guess logical consequence. Let's see who follows.
Yeah. Even though Asuzi has some background there in Fürth, he's been with the club for a long time. He played there, but this is how things go. Very fast-paced environment, the soccer club and this whole industry, professional sports. So, off to the next one.
Exactly.
Okay, but what games did you specifically want to point out? It was a very interesting weekend. Again. We mentioned the Derby result here, but what else was out there for our listeners?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, top of the table changed a little bit. Both Düsseldorf and Karlsruhe, they won their away games. Düsseldorf played a 3-0 secure win in Regensburg. Karlsruhe actually scored only one goal this time in Ulm, but nonetheless 3 points in the bag. We have a change in the third position because Hamburger SV won their home game against Magdeburg. They were kind of like direct competitors for the third spot, the kind of the relegation spot. Hamburg won that game. So now they're once again third position. We know the story from the past couple of seasons. Has Hamburg typically remained in that spot for a very long time until they kind of drop out just right before the end of the season. So now they're back in third position. Let's see if they can pull it through this time. It would be very important for a club of that magnitude to eventually and finally make their way back to the first Bundesliga. What do you think are the chances this year?
I think we desperately need a team like Hamburg in the Bundesliga. I do like Düsseldorf up there as well because they just draw a lot of supporters. A big club in that Rhineland-Westphalia area. So, yeah, I don't know if you need Karlsruhe necessarily. Obviously, they're a very stable team as well. I hope that some of the other big teams can make a push. It doesn't really look like it. Hertha Berlin, too unstable. Schalke now fighting for relegation. Kaiserslautern Nürnberg somewhere in the midfield. So I don't know. I certainly would hope that Karlsruhe and Hamburg definitely swap these spots so Hamburg can finally make it directly up there. We know how the relegation games went over the past years. Usually the Bundesliga team, the 16th of the Bundesliga, is much stronger than the third of the second league. And they end up, taking the win away out of these relegation playoffs. So, and Hamburg has very bad experience on that spot, as you said. So I would hope that they at least swap Karlsruhe and Hamburg, and we see Hamburg and Düsseldorf competing in the Bundesliga next year for sure. And I also hope, for the lack of the attractiveness or for the sake of the attractiveness of the Bundesliga 1, that Kiel and another small team makes it down. So, we make this league a little bit more, give it more of the status that it actually deserves as on the top flight in Germany.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Maybe just to finish that segment up, we've seen as well Darmstadt, who were also struggling a lot in the first couple of games of the season. They fired 5 goals past Cologne in their home game on Friday night. Also probably a result that I did not expect, at least to this extent. Berlin, they won their game, but as you said, it's kind of like a roller coaster ride, fairly unstable. They're always up for a ridiculous defeat the match day after against some small team. So yeah, I don't really see them competing for the direct promotion spots as well. And last but not least, to finish things up with Kaiserslautern, after a bit of a drought, they finally managed to bag 3 points at home against Paderborn. Very, very important. After a few match days without a win, now they kind of established themselves again in the midfield of the table, which is hugely important. So yeah, on a long Saturday evening, this was the final football game on Saturday that took place there, and very satisfying, at least from I guess both our perspectives.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, that was good to see. On the third league, lots of tight results as well. There's not a single matchup that we can point out and say this was particularly great to mention. Maybe Dynamo Dresden against Rot-Weiß Essen, which ended 3-3. But in the third league right now, between the second spot in the table and the seventh spot in the table, we only got 2 points. So with Dynamo Dresden, Arminia Bielefeld, Cottbus, Saarbrücken, Wiesbaden, Aue, we have 6 teams competing for that number 2 spot in the table. Only Sandhausen has a little bit of air already with 20 points. They're 3 points ahead of Dresden right now. But this is going to be a tight league, I would assume, almost until the end. Yeah, and I hope that some of the bigger names will go out as the winners here and earn the promotion. I would love to see a team like Saarbrücken or even Energie Cottbus. It's a far drive for those that live in the west of Germany, such as or the southwest, such as Alex here. But Energie Cottbus, I don't know. I always thought I had some sympathy for them, and I like to see a couple of Eastern clubs, in the higher leagues as well. So I wouldn't mind Dynamo Dresden and Cottbus making up there. I honestly don't need Sandhausen, even though it's close again to you. It's probably in front of your home door, almost. But
pretty much.
Who needs Sandhausen in the second Bundesliga? It's too small of a city, no fan base, horrible stadium. It's like super unattractive. Sorry, Sandhausen. That's the
yeah,
truth.
well. I know what you mean, man, but what can you do? They do solid work, and it's upsetting that the others can't keep up with them, They've done so many years in Bundesliga 2, they always kind of manage to stay afloat, and I totally I share your emotions. Even though I'm not used to you going on such a rant. But yeah, well,
had a lot of coffee today.
All right.
Yeah, let's move on here, guys, with our first category of the day. Here comes unmatched moments. Unmatched moments of the beautiful game.
Yeah, I'm going to start this off, Rick. We've talked already a little bit about Bayer Leverkusen. Very eventful game with a lot of controversial situations, but there was probably one player on the pitch who had a particularly eventful week, which is Leverkusen's striker, Leverkusen's number 9, Victor Boniface. It was a very chaotic week that he's looking back to. It actually started already a couple of days before the match in Frankfurt, when Boniface was traveling with the Nigerian national team, and on their way to their AFCON qualifier match in Sierra Leone, the plane had to divert to Libya and kind of make an emergency landing of some sort. And the team then spent the next 12 or so hours stranded in the airport in Libya without access to food or proper internet. And Boniface was actually one of the players who kind of tweeted about the situations. There were some funny photos circling around the internet of the team just trying to sleep or fall asleep on the very uncomfortable airport chairs or airport waiting areas. Eventually, the team later returned to Nigeria, from where Boniface then returned to Leverkusen to play their away match in Frankfurt on the weekend. In that game, he then proceeded to miss a penalty in the early minutes of the game before eventually scoring also the winning goal for Leverkusen in the second half. So also on the pitch, a lot going on. But that wasn't even all. On the following morning, on the way back from Frankfurt, news emerged that Boniface was involved in a car accident on the German Autobahn, the highway between Frankfurt and Cologne. And he was actually taken to the hospital. So luckily, it kind of turned out that no one was injured, and Boniface was released from the hospital on the same day. But the car was an absolute wreck. And I'm glad nothing much happened. He's a brilliant striker, I think. But yeah, I'm sure he and some of his teammates will remember this chaotic week for a very long time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you see what crazy schedule these players have, and then he's still on the pitch. I mean, you don't know what the communication was at the end between Xabi Alonso and him, and when he said, "No, I want to play, I'm fit," then of course you throw him in. But based on that story, I wonder if his friend actually that was driving the car. So Boniface didn't drive the car himself; it was his friend, and the news said the friend lost control due to a lack of sleep. So now I'm wondering if this friend was on that Libya trip as well, or why he had a lack of sleep. But anyways, we will probably not find that out. Most important, as you said, is that Boniface is okay. Great that he's okay.
Yeah, agreed.
I have a quote for you, Alex, to introduce my unmatched moment of this week. Lots of rest and a beer. 100% a beer. Yeah, this is
couldn't agree more.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's great hearing that from a professional soccer player, though. In this case, it was from Marlon Ritter after Kaiserslautern win on Saturday night over Paderborn that you mentioned, at 3-0. Yeah, and that brought him back on track, right? And it really felt like a relief. That's how a lot of people must have felt on the Betzenberg after this intense game. The first home win this season was certainly a big relief for the Red Devils. So, yeah, Marlon Ritter voiced it in a way that, work done. I need to rest, but before I can even close my eyes, I need a good old German beer. I hope he was what's Kaiserslautern's beer there? Carlsberg. He probably drank a Carlsberg.
Well, probably not the Carlsberg that most of our listeners may know. It's not the Danish Carlsberg, but it's Palatine version of it.
Yeah.
Did you know, Rick? Did you know that actually when I watched the game, I wanted to go to the stadium, but I had a couple of errands to run that day, so I eventually didn't make it to the stadium. So I watched the game with a couple of guys on Saturday. And one of them told me that Marlon Ritter had a grass allergy. Did you know that?
Yes, I know that. That's why he's always playing with long sleeve. I've heard that before. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the first time I heard
Robin.
it. Really? So that's why Robin also was wearing long sleeves most of the time, right?
Yeah. So he introduced that, or Robin actually introduced that into professional football, and a lot of arguments evolved because he would wear different colors sometimes, and then the UEFA or what made him match the color of his underpants and the shirt with his jersey. So he kind of introduced that due to his grass allergy.
Well, there you go.
Little side
Maybe
fact,
that's also the reason why Marlon Ritter's face is always so red. Who knows?
Yeah, but I think because he gets angry so much, right? He constantly yells at the ref. But hey, he's a great guy. I really think it's great to have him on Kaiserslautern, and just a character in that second Bundesliga. And again, I watched the game as well. I gotta say, this kickoff time at 8:30 German time for the Bundesliga 2 is so much better than the Monday night game that they used to have. It really gives it a proper stage, and it was a great matchup again. And I don't want to spoil here our schedule baller category, but next week another top game in Bundesliga 2, also involving Kaiserslautern, again live on TV, and I believe this time also on ESPN Plus. Düsseldorf against Kaiserslautern. So two big traditional teams going head to head again. Düsseldorf, as we know, at the top of the table. So something to look forward to, to watch live on German TV or to watch live in the US on ESPN Plus.
Yeah, exactly. And just to kind of finish that one up with a thought, I just believe that timing 20:30 on a Saturday night with the floodlights on, Kaiserslautern turns into a different monster, literally. I think that's when they perform at their absolute best, and that's when they are also able to win against the big teams. So Düsseldorf currently on top of the table. It's an away game. Düsseldorf's the clear favorite, but hey, it's 20:30 Saturday night. Kaiserslautern is up to anything.
Right. I agree, and we need to move on to our next category. But I had just, I need to get this off my chest. I had the same discussion with, some folks in Germany last year around Kaiserslautern's bad season. And I said, okay, how come they can perform good at 8:30, but then when the 1 p.m. or 1:30 Bundesliga 2 games kick off, they show a different face. I mean, we all feel the same when we go to the stadium. I'd rather be in the stadium at 3:30, or at a Saturday night game than going there on a Sunday when I know I have to work next day and all I'm doing is rush home. But these are professional soccer players, and their mental attitude just needs to be different. They need to go in every game the same. And just because the floodlights are on and the stadium is all lit, it changes the team's character. That's also, I don't know. They need to work on that.
Yeah,
they need to perform.
In a way, you're right. In a way, it's a weakness.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, but since we talk so much about atmosphere, Alex, let's go into the second category of the day, fantastic takeaways, and see what we got from the ranks this week. Fantastic takeaways. Highlights from the stands. Yeah, we saw quite a few impressive fan displays this past week. Which one made it to the top of your list this time?
Yeah, hard to decide, really. I felt like many of the organized fans in Germany kind of used the Nations League break to put an extra effort and creativity into their performances. So there were a lot of highlights. My personal favorite, however, was Bayern Munich's choreography against Stuttgart on Saturday. And the choreography actually celebrated 50 years since the Champions League title in 1974. That title actually formed part of Bayern's historic Champions League run when they managed to lift the trophy for 3 consecutive years, which is something that only the likes of Real Madrid managed to win 3 consecutive Champions League titles in a row. The mid-70s, absolute Bayern legends on the squad. Of course, first and foremost, the Kaiser, Franz Beckenbauer, but also goalie Sepp Maier, legendary striker Gerd Müller, and today's one of Bayern's bosses, Uli Hoeneß, Paul Breitner, another big name. The list goes on. These were actually also the same players who were then later on in the year the backbone of the German national team that won the World Cup at the end of the season of that same year. But yeah, I'm kind of going back to that choreography just to kind of describe why it was so special. It actually consisted of 3 different elements, separate elements. First of all, lots of red and white flags in the bottom tier of the south stand, the Bayern Südkurve, where the fans are located. Red and white flags that kind of formed the number 1974. The year where they lifted the trophy, of course, and then followed by like multiple banners across the lower and the middle tier of the stadium that had kind of illustrations, very detailed illustrations of moments from the final on them, including one showing the entire team lifting the Champions League trophy. I think there was a separate illustration of the coach and a separate illustration of Gerd Müller, again, kind of in isolation. And then another third element was another giant banner that reads in German, obviously, European Champions Cup winners. Actually, the tournament was not called Champions League back then, but I think it was called something like, the Champions Cup, or the Cup of the National Champions of Europe, something like this. So yeah, overall, again, I'm not always a huge fan of the Allianz Arena, but I think this time around, in terms of the choreography, they did a really, really good job. It looked super good. And of course, the performance on the pitch that followed the choreography was outstanding. So yeah, I'm sure a lot of happy Bavarians last Saturday there in Munich.
Right. I wonder if, Mr. Hoeneß and Rummenigge were actually happy with the Südkurve, the supporters area there. There's usually a lot of conflict going on between the club officials and, organized supporters there. Their group, the main group there, Schickeria, and the board of Bayern Munich have a long ongoing dispute, and Hoeneß likes to bash on these guys a lot, but then when he, sees his old team there and being celebrated in that fashion, maybe that even got a smile off his face. Anyways, I have a very impressive geography as my fantastic takeaway as well, which was shown in Hannover by the traveling Schalke fans this week. So, remarkable and noticeable is that this is actually an away geography. And we've seen those from other teams that played in Hannover. But what was special about this one is that it was covering both the lower and the upper tier of the stadium. And it was consistent of multiple elements, including a super detailed banner showing 2 coal mining workers in Schalke jerseys, and another banner that says something along the lines, "Here at Schalke, your heart and your honor guides your action." And to add a bit of a background here, Schalke and the city of Gelsenkirchen have a strong connection to their mining tradition. Back in the day when the region was one of Europe's major industrial centers, with coal mining being the backbone of the economy, many of the early supporters of the club were coal miners. So this connection is still celebrated by the fans today, and as part of the club's identity and pride in their roots, which is often the theme of the fan displays. Coal mining kind of symbolizes working class spirit, like hard work, resilience, solidarity, and the fans want to keep that heritage alive. And especially if they have a squad on the field, Alex, that doesn't live up to these attributes, this is when these type of choreographies come out and they reiterate, what Schalke stands for.
Yeah, exactly. And once again, I mean, we've talked about this many, many times. Schalke is such a massive club. And what you just described, it kind of summarizes the basic values and identity of the club. And it plays such a big role in that region. It's actually, I mean, there are many teams located in this wider Ruhrgebiet, Ruhr area. Some of them have similar backgrounds. Dortmund is, of course, right next door, but also other clubs, smaller clubs like Essen, Bochum is up there. It's a massive, metropolitan area, so to speak. And a lot of these clubs kind of unite a similar history. Coal mining is, part of that. Of course, it's an industry that has since kind of vanished, or at least there's very minimal activity. The region is also constantly going through struggles. But yeah, I mean, this is what unites them. This is what they stand for. And it was just a massive display. Seriously, I think there were way over 10,000 traveling fans, maybe even 15. I don't know the exact number. And hugely impressive. Thumbs up.
Yeah, can only hope that we won't see them again next year in the third league, because if you just look at the results and what they're currently performing on the pitch, then that's scary, and Schalke is definitely in the danger zone. So regardless, we don't have him under our Cluball trouble category this week. We'll see. Maybe we have to include him in the weeks to come. But let's take a look what you and I picked for this week in Cluball Trouble. Cluball Trouble. Painful to watch.
Yeah, and I'm going to start this off, Rick. So a couple of days ago, the Security Summit on Violence in Football Stadiums took place in Munich. It's a summit that is being attended by state politicians, for example, along with leaders, of course, from the German Football Association, the DFB, but also the German Football League Association, DFL. Obviously, the topics of the agenda include measures how to reduce violence or displays of whatever riots of some sort in stadiums. This may sound like it's a massive problem in Germany. It actually isn't. Last year, 2023, 25 million visitors visited German stadiums in the professional leagues. 1,200 people left those games with injuries, which means that there is less than a 0.005% chance that you get harmed while visiting a football stadium in Germany. Nevertheless, there is a summit, a political summit, targeting exactly that issue. Now going back to the main outcome of the meeting. So the summit kind of decided to establish a nationwide stadium ban commission. Currently, the bans are being handled individually by the clubs. But this commission from now on will be responsible for creating uniform guidelines for issuing stadium bans across Germany centrally. So again, in the future, the stadium bans will kind of be decided by what they call independent body to ensure, and I quote, consistency and fairness. We'll see about that. For example, according to the Interior Minister of the state of Saxony, the measure aims to address violent behavior by applying more targeted and consistent penalties rather than relying on collective punishments for larger groups of fans all at once, like we've seen already in the past occasionally. And I agree to that, but nevertheless, now you're basically establishing an isolated body that takes up your case and takes a decision without actually knowing very much about the circumstances. But anyway, we can discuss that in a minute. There were other opinions on the topic in contrast to that. For example, Bavaria's interior minister mentioned other forms of penalties, such as ghost games, so matches without fans, or point deductions for clubs whose fans have been acting up, let's say. Luckily, none of these measures were further explored in the meeting. But yeah, aside from the stadium ban discussions, there were a couple of other topics being discussed, including efforts to mitigate the use of pyrotechnics, another topic that is going around in circles. The summit concluded that the use of fireworks, similar items, shall remain prohibited, which means the ban on pyrotechnics therefore stays in place. Nothing new. We also know that pyrotechnics in the stadium are never going to stop. So I guess the vicious circle continues. But yeah, criticism about the summit came from fan groups who were once again not invited to join the debate. Also a very debatable issue. Also not new, by the way. Everyone kind of preaches, dialogue, but when it comes to the dialogue, the people who are most interested in it are not sitting on the table. So yeah, for example, the chairman of Germany's largest fan initiative criticized some of the decisions, and once again calling the whole debate about violence in the stadium overblown. He also argued that, for example, a visit to the Oktoberfest is statistically more dangerous than attending a football match, which goes back to what I said before, and also expressed, general skepticism about the effectiveness of stadium bans and obviously collective punishments. But yeah, once again, a discussion, and now I talked a lot again and again because it's kind of a topic that drives me wild. to be honest, I don't really know what my personal opinion is on that. I almost believe that things are just going to stay very much the same as they are. What I'm actually wondering more about, and Rick, we sometimes compare also your experiences from the stadiums in the US, having lived there for a long time. Is violence in stadiums actually a thing in the US? Is that a topic that makes it to the surface?
Yeah, it absolutely is. So if you go to a football game, I mean, people get pretty hammered there, and there's no separation of fans in the US, right? You don't have your typical away sector. You just mix in with the other teams. But even people in between games, when certain, some guys just get rowdy here when they drink. It's nothing that's specific to Europe. What's fascinating is that usually the groups that tend to be more on the violent end in Germany are not the ones that consume excessive alcohol, right? I don't know anyone that's super hammered in the active fancy during a game. This might change again. I'm just talking about what I was used to when I was really active about 10, 15 years ago. But the reality is, Alex, as I agree with you that a visit to a German soccer stadium is generally safe, that without police presence in these stadiums, which is what all these politicians want to reduce, obviously, because it costs the taxpayer a lot of money to put the police up for these games. Without a police present, we will see more violent encounters between the active fan scenes, right? But, you can talk about the hooligan phenomenon and how they even meet outside of stadium somewhere, on a random parking lot or some kind of forest stretch and fight in the forest, and they're not really hurting the average show that goes to the stadium, right?
Yeah, and as you said, these are, we're now talking about things that exclusively happen outside of the stadium. I think a football stadium inside is one of the safest places, pretty much. I
wouldn't disagree. As a family, you're safe. Nobody is bothered. You can argue that fireworks don't have a place, especially if, like back in the days when people were shooting fireworks into the family seating area, right? That's stupid. But nobody does that anymore. Actually, the fan scene like kind of cleaned up itself from the inside, and this is kind of unspoken rule that you're not doing that, right? You don't shoot the stuff on the field. You don't shoot that stuff in the ranks. So from that perspective, even the fireworks topic is not as critical as it used to be. So it would have been better to find a path to legalize that. But yeah, long story short, I agree with your statement. In the stadium, it's safe in Europe. When something is happening, then it's happening outside. If you take the police away, though, I don't know what that's going to change around the game days. Maybe you'll see more game days, a counter between hooligans and some of the ultras. That might be the case. But a lot of times they meet outside, they do their thing, and nobody ever notices.
All right. What's your Cluball trouble of the week?
Yeah, that's kind of a hard shift now, but I picked a discussion around Bayern CEO. There was some news that we received from the Manager magazine in Germany this week. They're covering an event that took place about 3 years ago when the current Bayern CEO, Jan Christian Dresen, threw a newspaper in the face of a female employee. And this all comes, again, this was 3 years ago, and it comes up now where Dresen's contract is expiring and the discussion about the renewal of his work paper just started. So based on the German newspaper Bild, it was purposely spread by some of his colleagues who want to take over his role. And yeah, Alex, it's not a good look for Bayern again, and it shows me that they weren't quite able to keep these types of fights behind closed doors yet, as they used to do when Hoeneß and Rummenigge were running the show. None of that stuff ever went out to the public. So now voices are getting louder that are calling for an ex-player as a CEO again. The way Bayern was traditionally run in the past. So the idea is here with the next player, you can unite the Bayern family once again. And some are already calling for Thomas Müller, Alex, or Philipp Lahm. Yeah, but what's your take on these guys?
Yeah, Müller is still playing, so I say let him decide on when he wants to end his career. But I can certainly see Müller in some form of executive or potentially even a coaching position. He's a very, very intelligent player. So I would actually think that he might be a good coach. Lahm, on the other hand, he's more of the executive type of guy. And he has already gained some experience. He was the chief or chair of the committee for the Euros, I believe, this year in Germany, something along those lines, or the head of the planning committee. So he's had already his experiences in these form or in this type of positions. Very smart person. I think he could actually be a good fit. And he's certainly not the type of guy who throws newspapers at female employees, which is something that just cannot happen. And I think Dresen is an ex-finance guy or an ex-banker. So he's a corporate dude.
Right.
It just
seems to be
happen.
very calm, though, right? I mean, if you see him in the public, he seems to be like the most calm guy. But you never know, right? Behind doors, what happens sometimes. And yeah, but, just latest news as of yesterday, actually, they said regardless, they're going to renew that contract. So I don't think we're going to see Alarm or anyone else for now. But it's just not a good look on Bayern. It's just not like it used to be. And for Bayern, you can only hope that that doesn't impact their performance. I mean, in the last couple of years, it certainly did. So we'll see. And this brings us to the end of this category. Let's take a quick look at the schedule baller category as well to see what we have to watch next week, Alex. Schedule ballers. What's kicking next? I see first and foremost some great Champions League matchups ahead. Of course, Dortmund playing Real Madrid this week, the rematch of last year's final, as I mentioned earlier already. And then you also got Bayern in a matchup against Barcelona, meeting their ex-coach Flick and their ex-striker Lewandowski. Anything else cooking in the league on the weekend we should watch out for, Alex?
Yeah, Rick, a couple of interesting games in the Bundesliga. Not too many, though. I think from the table standpoint, Freiburg or Leipzig-Freiburg, I should say, is probably the top match of the game day. This is the second and the third meeting each other here on Saturday afternoon. Then the top game on Saturday night, Bremen versus Leverkusen, could be an interesting one if Bremen manages to continue their good form and take a win. They would be up there together with Frankfurt, Union, and Dortmund. And on Sunday, we actually have two good friends meeting each other. Bochum is hosting Bayern Munich. It's two clubs that have a very, very long-standing friendship among the fan groups. Unfortunately, nonetheless, Bochum needs those 3 points desperately. I just don't believe that Bayern is going to do him the favor. And another interesting one is the Sunday afternoon match between Union Berlin and Frankfurt, another two neighbors on the table meeting each other, fighting for the EuroLeague spots.
Yeah.
Anything?
And then I was going to say on the lower leagues, second Bundesliga, we mentioned already Düsseldorf against Kaiserslautern, top game Saturday, 8:30 German time, definitely watchworthy, and again live on ESPN Plus. And in the third league, I just took a quick peek. We have Hansa Rostock meeting Rot-Weiß Essen. That's also a nice matchup. Two teams again with big fan scenes. So yeah, but that's plenty to watch again, plenty to follow and look up the results for those of you that are interested. We'll be back next week again. We'll try to post our podcast on Monday again as usual, to give you a little bit of a head start. We have do we have DFB Pokal next week, Alex? I believe so, right?
I think so, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
you're
that's
right.
going to be interesting as well. The German Cup is coming back. So, we'll make sure we upload the episode next Monday. Again, as usual, we really appreciate your support for this podcast. Make sure you recommend us to others. You like our content. You leave us a comment. And we hope you will be back and tune in next week again. Bye-bye, guys.
Thank you, guys. Take care. See you soon.